granted. Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Keneally.
Mr. Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Why is the Prime Minister cutting JobKeeper, cutting JobSeeker and cutting wages when his government has spent almost $1 billion in advertising?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, it's disappointing to start the new parliamentary year with a question that is, of course, so full of misleading elements, so much trying to be the Labor Party running a consistent approach to being a scare campaign yet again. The Labor Party that even on the matters of advertising doesn't seem to think that it's important for Australians to understand the support that's been available to them through the COVID-19 pandemic, for them to have the health advice they need through the COVID-19 pandemic, for them to have the information they deserve through the COVID-19 pandemic. And, Mr. President, there are a range of very sound, good reasons as to why the Australian public need and deserve information through this pandemic. Mr. President, further, the policy measures that our government has put in place always set out against the principles of being proportionate, targeted and temporary, have served Australia in a position to achieve economic outcomes that are the envy of much of the rest of the world. In our country, we've seen 800,000 jobs come back during the course of the pandemic from the initial collapse. In Australia, we should be proud of the fact that we have seen the effective unemployment rate, which peaked around 15%, now come back to a position where it is on par with the overall unemployment rate around 6.6%. These, of course, are the achievements of having put in place policy responses that were effective, but also policy responses that are true to the principles we set out, that they would be temporary and targeted to the circumstances, and that we will continue to adapt and adjust to those circumstances as we have successfully done at every stage of this global crisis.
Senator Keneally, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. The latest figures show that there are more than 8 people on unemployment payments for every job vacancy. Why won't the Prime Minister rule out cutting JobSeeker back to $40 a day?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, the support through JobKeeper and the JobSeeker supplement have been important elements of our response today. But they're not the only elements of support to be able to continue to create more jobs and get more Australians back into work. We do see record levels of participation in the Australian employment market now. Remarkable situation, having faced a recession and a global pandemic, to have a circumstance now where the participation rate is at a record level, demonstrating the high levels of confidence that have been established across the Australian economy in both consumers and in businesses. Now, there is still a job to be done. We don't deny that there is still very clearly a job to be done to continue to grow employment. That is why we continue support, be it our programs like Job Trainer, be it programs like Home Builder, be it subsidies for apprenticeships and traineeships. These are all important initiatives.
Senator Birmingham, time for the answers expired. Senator Keneally, a final
Thank you, Mr. President.
question.
How many of the 2.3 million small and family businesses in Australia and the 4.7 million jobs that they support are acceptable casualties of this government's decision to cut JobKeeper in March?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, here we see the scare tactics from those opposite. Those opposite who I note, Mr. President, I note the Leader of the Opposition was out there the other day saying that Mr. Albanese, I believe today, Senator Abetz, Mr. Albanese today, the Leader of the Opposition was out there somehow suggesting that spending was too much. And yet we have others who come in here suggesting there should be more spending. The inconsistency from those opposite, of course, knows few boundaries. Now, these are incredibly trying times for many Australian businesses, as they are for businesses right around the world. In Australia, we saw last year a decline in terms of business insolvencies relative to previous years. That was a function of the extraordinary levels of support and changes government had put in place. We've always acknowledged not every job and not every business could survive through a global pandemic, but the success of this country in
Order.
helping them
Senator
survive
Birmingham,
stands out
time
from the
for
rest of the
answer
world.
has expired. Senators, I draw to your attention the presence in the gallery of the Ambassador of Switzerland to Australia, His Excellency Mr Pedro Zvaran. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to the Parliament and in particular to the Senate. Senator McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the Morrison government's economic recovery plan is working in 2021 to rebuild our economy, create jobs and secure Australia's future in the wake of the global pandemic?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks very much, Mr President. I thank Senator McLaughlin for his question, and I know his very strong advocacy on behalf of so many businesses in South Australia, so many people across South Australia, as my coalition colleagues do universally across Australia, in terms of support for jobs growth and economic success across the country. Relative to the rest of the world, Australia starts 2021 in a very strong economic position. There is much we can be thankful for as a nation, and our economic strength relative to other countries, particularly advanced economies, is something to be incredibly thankful for. More than 90% of the 1.3 million Australians who either lost their jobs or had their work hours reduced to zero during the peak of the pandemic are now back at work. Almost 800,000 jobs have been created in the past 7 months, and pleasingly, Mr President, women have taken up the majority of these new jobs that have been created. As I referenced before, the participation rate in the Australian workforce has reached a record 66.2%. As my colleague Senator Cash has highlighted, this strength in the employment market, such a strong show of confidence. Quarterly growth has had its biggest increase since 1976, and consumer and business confidence are back to pre-pandemic levels. In the face of the biggest global economic shock of our lifetimes, Australia's economic comeback is strong. Our economic recovery plan is working. It has been supported by $251 billion in direct economic support to date, and Treasury analysis has demonstrated that this support is expected to result in economic activity being 5% higher in 2020-21 than would have otherwise been the case, and 4.5% higher in 2021-22. Showing the ongoing effect, and that ongoing effect comes indeed through our tax reform changes as well, the ongoing support of the JobMaker hiring credit. These give continued support right across the Australian economy to the recovery.
Order. Senator McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline to the Senate the Morrison government's priorities for the year ahead?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, the #1 priority remains to suppress the virus and to successfully deliver the vaccine across Australia. Our government has outlined a $1.9 billion vaccine rollout strategy, which is on top of the $4.4 billion we have spent on vaccine purchases, medical research and, of course, support for our neighbouring countries. We are working closely with the states and territories, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, the Australian Medical Associations, large logistical companies, general practices and community pharmacies to make sure we have a highly effective and safe vaccine rollout. Vaccinations of Australians will commence in late February, pending approval from the Therapeutic Goods Administration to ensure an orderly rollout across priority groups first and foremost, and then working through the rest of the country. This is central to our ongoing support of the economic recovery, to the delivery of essential services for Australians, and to continuing to make sure we protect Australia's
Senator
interests
Birmingham.
here
Senator
and around the
McLaughlin,
world.
a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline how Australia's economic recovery compares to our international counterparts?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, the Australian economy is forecast to outperform all major advanced economies in 2020. Real GDP in 2020 is expected to fall by 2.5% before growing by 4.5% in 2021. This compares in 2020 to a fall of 7.5% across the euro area, 5.25% in Japan and 3.25% in the United States. In the June quarter last year, our GDP fell by 7%, but this compared to falls of around 12% in New Zealand, 14% in France and 20% in the United Kingdom. These stark figures are a reminder of the enormous challenges many other countries are facing as they deal with the health and economic crises that have been caused by the COVID-19 global pandemic. But in Australia, Our AAA credit rating has been reaffirmed. We are seeing people getting back to work. We are seeing a recovery that bodes well for Australia's continued strength into the future.
Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne. Tourism operators in Cairns have warned the Morrison government that thousands of jobs will be lost if JobKeeper isn't extended. In January, Liberal MP Warren Entsch told the Cairns Post, and I quote, "I have got no doubt support will continue for as long as it needs to happen, and extending JobKeeper was, and I quote, a no-brainer. Is he right?"
Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the senator for her question. There is no doubt, as the senator has alluded to, and as any of us who live in and visit tourism-reliant areas of Australia know, that is when we can go from state to state, of course, Mr. President, that tourism has taken a very significant impact from COVID-19, and former Minister Birmingham particularly, has worked very hard with the industry in terms of response and support from government. And we have seen a boost to domestic tourism over summer, especially in those regions within driving or travel distance of major population centres. And those parts of the sector, though, Mr. President, that rely on international travel and tourism in particular do continue to face very difficult circumstances. And so from Minister Birmingham to Minister Tehan, the government has been engaging very closely with the tourism sector to understand how we are able to continue to assist while we do wait for international tourism to return, and how we actively encourage Australians to engage in domestic tourism. We hope that there will be some opportunity, for example, out of travel bubbles, ultimately to assist in that international tourism to return. So it is a very challenging time, Mr. President. There is no question about that. So through COVID-19, the government has provided record levels of economic support through programs such as JobKeeper, through small business cash payments of up to $100,000, and they have sustained hundreds of thousands of tourism businesses and jobs across Australia. As part of our plan to support tourism recovery, we're also providing further targeted assistance to help the tourism sector to rebound and to help save as many jobs as possible. That's in addition to our record funding for Tourism Australia of over $231 million in 2021.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Green, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Treasury data shows that 3,600 businesses in Cairns are relying on JobKeeper, more than any other postcode in Queensland. How many jobs will be lost in Cairns when JobKeeper ends in March?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll take the details of the numbers on notice in terms of the senator's question. I was saying, though, that we have provided record funding support for Tourism Australia that is being used to directly support the tourism industry, including ramping up that domestic marketing campaigns with phase 2 of the Holiday Here This Year campaign, which is now underway, and of course positioning to commence international marketing campaigns when the time is right. We've outlined a clear plan for Australia to create jobs, to rebuild our economy, including helping to secure the future of Australia's tourism industry. That includes the provision of a $50 million Recovery for Regional Tourism Fund to boost tourism in 9 regions heavily reliant on international tourism. That's about delivering tailored assistance measures to help tourism businesses pivot to the domestic market. Those applications are now open, with eligible applicants able to submit requests for funding until the end of September this year. We've also earmarked $100 million of funding from the Building Better Regions Fund for
Senator
tourism
Payne,
infrastructure
time
under a new—
expired. Senator Green, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Is the Morrison government working on any support plan for tourism businesses in Cairns, and how many more jobs and livelihoods will be lost in the region while people wait for Mr Morrison to finally take action?
Senator Payne.
Mr President. I thank Senator Green for her further supplementary question. I had already identified the Recovery for Regional Tourism Fund. I had just referred to the Building Better Regions Fund focused on tourism infrastructure, about helping the regions boost the supply of new quality tourism infrastructure to drive visitation in those regions. Also $100 million in the Regional Recovery Partnerships Program, coordinating that investment with other levels of government, state and territory and local government, to support growth and recovery, including in tourism, in 10 priority regions. Also a $50 million business events program, a grants program, also open for applications, helping to instil confidence in the business events industry. That is also particularly important. And, Mr President, the $128 million COVID-19 consumer travel support program that is providing, and this is important particularly for regions which have a high number of travel agents, one-off grants to eligible travel agents, to tour arrangement service providers.
Senator Payne,
all of those are focuses of the government's plan, and we understand.
Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Leader of the Government representing the Prime Minister. US President Joe Biden has made climate action a priority. He's taken dramatic action against coal, oil and gas companies, supported clean energy and is preparing for a climate summit on the 22nd of April. He's spoken to many heads of state, both close allies and rivals, but he hasn't yet spoken to the Australian Prime Minister. Why hasn't this call happened? Is Mr Morrison way down the call list because he's a climate laggard?
Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, I am certain of one thing, and that is that, President Biden won't be making his calls or scheduling his call list on the advice of Senator Hanson-Young or the Australian Greens. What I do know is that the new US administration, who we congratulate upon their election and welcome the opportunity to work with them, have already engaged deeply with building relationships across the Australian government. That the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor have each spoken with our Foreign Minister, Mr Payne, and that the Secretary of Defence has spoken with Senator Reynolds as our Defence Minister, and that indeed Mr Kerry, John Kerry, the President Biden's climate envoy, has spoken with Minister Taylor, our Minister for Emissions Reduction. So indeed engagement has occurred there, and I have no doubt that discussions between President Biden and the Prime Minister will occur in short order, I am certain. But those discussions are occurring between our government and the new US administration, as you would expect, right across each of the portfolio levels. And I also reject categorically the description of laggard, or whatever term it was that Senator Hanson used. The statistics show very clearly that Australia's record in relation to emissions reduction stands well compared with the rest of the world. But between 2005 and 2020, Australia's emissions fell by nearly 17%, by 16.6% to be precise. This compares with an OECD average of emissions reduction of 9%. Or a New Zealand emissions reduction of around 1%, or Canada's emissions reduction of less than 1%. These are the comparisons that show Australia's track record is strong, just as our intention to continue to drive the technological change that will deliver further emissions reduction is resolute.
The answer has expired. Senator Hanson-Young, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, I think we'd all be interested to know what Climate Envoy John Kerry actually said to Minister Taylor, because he's made his views about gas being a transition fuel very clear. Last week he said the problem with gas, and I'm quoting, is if we build out a huge infrastructure for gas now and continue to use it as a bridge fuel when we haven't really exhausted other possibilities, we're going to be stuck with stranded assets in 10, 20, 30 years. Will the Morrison government be trumpeting their gas-fired recovery in front of the US
Senator
again?
Hanson-Young, resume your seat. The ability to complete a question can be directly related to the length of the preamble, and if I call senators to order, I ask them to heed the chair. Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, our government will stand by all of our energy policies that are about achieving secure, affordable, reliable energy for Australia, for Australian industry, for Australian manufacturers, while also meeting our commitments to emissions reduction targets. We also stand by the investments we're making in our stretch targets that are about the technologies necessary to achieve emissions reduction in the future. Our targets investing in getting clean hydrogen to under $2 per kilo, in getting electricity from storage for firming to under $100 per megawatt hour, from getting low-emission steel production under $900 per tonne and low-emissions aluminium under $2,700 per tonne, from getting carbon capture and storage under $20 per tonne of CO2, and getting soil carbon measurement under $3 per hectare per yearbook. These are all about how you actually achieve emissions reduction rather than just grandstand on it, Senator Hanson-Young, and that's where we're focusing the investment and the energy.
Senator Hanson-Young, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Will the Morrison government be taking a more ambitious plan to this summit in April? In fact, will you even be invited? Will you be invited? And will you continue to isolate Australia on the world stage in the eyes of everybody else who wants real action on climate change? And now the US are making us look like we are laggards, left for dead, and what are you going to do about it?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. We're starting the year with lies and misleading statements in Labor questions, and of course, lots of hysteria from the Australian Greens. The facts of the matter, Mr. President, the facts of the matter are that our government looks forward to working with the Biden administration. We've already had outreach on a number of levels, including between the Minister for Emissions Reduction and the Climate Change Envoy. We particularly look forward to the fact that President Biden, during his campaign, emphasised the importance of investment in transformative technologies, because, as we have identified, you don't achieve emissions reduction outcomes without those transformative technologies. It's transformative technologies that have driven the remarkable take-up of renewable energy in Australia, and it's transformative technologies that will achieve change elsewhere, including in other countries around the world who we need to see achieve emissions reductions as well if the world is to successfully tackle this issue together.
Senator Dean Smith.
My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. Will the minister update the Senate on developments in Myanmar?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Smith for his question and for his long interest in matters concerning Myanmar. The Australian government is, as I have stated in a statement yesterday, deeply concerned that the Myanmar military, the Tatmadaw, has seized control of Myanmar. Early on the 1st of February, the Tatmadaw detained democratically elected leaders, including State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, the President and others. The Tatmadaw has announced a state of emergency and the establishment of a caretaker government, with the military-appointed Vice President currently appointed caretaker President. He has handed authority to the Commander-in-Chief for 1 year. Mr. President, the situation does remain fluid. Communications, including both phones and internet, in the capital Naypyidaw in the city of Yangon are severely disrupted. The Tatmadaw are demanding revision of the November 2020 election results and have announced they intend to hold new elections. Note for the record that Australia was part of international observer participation through our post in Yangon to those elections. In the statement I released yesterday, we did call on the military to respect the rule of law, to resolve disputes according to lawful mechanisms, and to release immediately all civilian leaders who had been detained unlawfully. The Australian government has called for the peaceful reconvening of the National Assembly of Myanmar, consistent with the results of that November 2020 general election. Our embassy in Yangon is making inquiries regarding the safety and position of Australians to the extent that disrupted communications allow. These events are particularly concerning because the political stability of ASEAN member states is essential to achieving a secure, peaceful region, prosperous and open Indo-Pacific. ASEAN, of course, is at the centre of our vision for the Indo-Pacific region.
Senator Smith, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the minister advise on Australia's engagement with other nations that share our concerns about these developments?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator Smith. We are in close contact with other countries, including through our embassy in Yangon, to discuss these developments and our respective responses. Like-minded democracies around the world have expressed that they share our deep concern. We welcome statements by regional partners and other governments, including ASEAN Chair Brunei. I spoke with Dato Erawan, my counterpart in Brunei, today just before question time. From Malaysia, from Singapore, from Indonesia, the United States, the UK, Japan, Canada and others. I've also spoken today, as the government leader in the Senate alluded to, with United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and raised these issues in that discussion, and I will continue to raise them with other colleagues. Last week, on the 29th of January, we signed a joint statement affirming our support for Myanmar's democratic transition, urging the military to adhere to democratic norms with a number of like-minded countries represented in Yangon. We will continue to work through our overseas network to engage with other governments, particularly in our region.
Senator Smith, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the minister advise the Senate on Australia's strong commitment to supporting democracy in Myanmar?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Australia has been a long-standing partner for Myanmar through both good times and more difficult periods. We've consistently supported the move to democracy, that transition period, and the social and economic reform agenda. I visited Myanmar shortly after my appointment as Foreign Minister in December of 2018. I know Senator Smith has visited on previous occasions as well. Our development program there includes a focus on promoting peace and stability, on democratic institutions, on supporting elections, on the peace process and women's empowerment and gender equality. Our commitment to Myanmar's development and Myanmar's people continues at this difficult time and includes support for vaccine access, for delivering humanitarian assistance and supporting inclusive social and economic development. We sincerely hope to see Myanmar succeed for the benefit of all of its people and for our region as a whole. And I do want to assure the people of Myanmar, the many members in the diaspora here in Australia, that we will stand with them in this difficult time.
Expired. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. On the 7th of September, Mr Morrison promised, and I quote, "Australians will be among the first in the world to receive a COVID-19 vaccine." With 60 countries having commenced vaccinations and more than 100 million doses of the vaccine already given, how can the Morrison government claim it has delivered on this promise?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator, for the question. Mr. President, what this government is doing is what we said we'd do, which is manage an orderly rollout of vaccine, Mr. President, and managing the vaccine rollout, Mr. President, with a fully approved vaccine starting very soon with the arrival of the Pfizer product after the TGA approved the vaccine from Pfizer, and we will continue to manage that orderly rollout, Mr. President. I have to say it's really disappointing. It's really disappointing, Mr. President, that the Labor Party continues with their completely reckless commentary with respect to vaccine, Mr. President. We have at all times, Mr. President, managed an orderly process through accessing an appropriate number of vaccine candidates, going through an appropriate and full approval process to ensure that Australians can have confidence in the vaccines that we are looking to provide to Australians. The confidence that Australians have in this vaccine, in the vaccines that we have available, is going to be absolutely crucial to take up of vaccines across the country and to the protection of Australians, particularly those, Mr. President, who are most vulnerable. So, Mr. President, we will continue our orderly and structured process for the provision, approval and application of vaccines that we have started, and we have continued to be honest with the Australian people with respect to the rollout, the availability of vaccines, and we've brought them on responsibly not like the Labor Party, who've continued with this reckless commentary which will only
Order,
undermine
Senator
confidence
Colbeck.
in the vaccination process.
Senator Colbeck, time's expired. Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
Yes, I do have a supplementary. Thank you, Mr President. On the 5th of November, Mr Morrison declared that Australians would be, and I quote, at the front of the queue. Can the minister confirm approximately 60 countries are in front of Australia? So which queue was Mr Morrison referring to?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, I will repeat what I've just said with respect to roll-out of the vaccine. Mr President, we will continue to roll out the vaccine in a responsible manner with a fully approved process. The TGA has undergone a comprehensive approval process for the vaccines to ensure—
Order, Senator Colbeck. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Point of order is direct relevance. The minister was asked a question, a very short question, which included the Prime Minister's assertion to the country that Australians were at the front of the queue. We would invite the minister to respond to the question, which is which queue was the Prime Minister referring to?
I'm listening carefully to the minister's answer. I can't instruct the minister either on the part of the question or the terms in which he may answer. However, it was a relatively narrow question. I'm going to consider the minister to be directly relevant if he strictly confines his comments to the distribution or rollout, for lack of a better term, of the vaccine. But I'm listening carefully to his answer. Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, we will continue to roll the vaccine out in accordance with approval by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is the responsible thing for us to do, properly certified and approved by the TGA, which is exactly what we're doing. We are one of the first countries in the world to be able to provide a fully approved vaccination process for Australians, and we will continue to do that because one of the most important things, Mr President, one of the most important things is that Australians have confidence in the vaccine that we are offering to them. And the take-up of the vaccine—
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. In the UK, US, Canada and the EU, the time between approval and the first doses being administered was between 3 and 6 days. The TGA approved the Pfizer vaccine 8 days ago. How many more days will Australians have to wait?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. The Pfizer vaccine is being provided to Australia in accordance with the contractual arrangements that we signed with Pfizer for the take-up of the vaccine. And under those arrangements, shipment of the vaccine was conditional on our approval of the vaccine. So we are receiving the vaccine in accordance with the contractual arrangements that were made with the manufacturers of the virus. When the virus arrives in this country, it will be batch tested to ensure that it meets the requirements that it's specified to have, and then it will be made available to Australians. Mr President, I am not going to descend into the irresponsible and reckless commentary that the Labor Party are trying to engage in, because confidence in this vaccine
Senator Colbeck,
is absolutely
I have Senator
vital.
Wong on a point of order. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Point of order, direct relevance. He's worried about confidence in the vaccine. I assume he's going to reject Mr Kelly's arguments publicly.
Senator Wong, that's not a point of order.
My point of order is direct relevance. Delay between approval and administration.
Thank you, Senator Wong. On the point of order, I have ruled before that when there are strictly drafted questions, and I do consider this one to be one without pejorative phrases, political observations on the opposition are not directly relevant. Now, Senator Colbeck, you only have 2 seconds remaining. I'll ask you to continue. Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, as I said, the vaccine is being provided strictly in terms of the
Colbeck,
contractual—
time for the answer has expired. Senator Chandler. Order. Order on my left. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it is an honour to ask this question to the Minister for Superannuation, Financial Services and the Digital Economy, Senator Hume. Can the minister inform the Senate why the Morrison government is modernising and improving—
Order! Order on my left. Order! Senator Ayres, you're not being helpful. It is only our first day back. Order!
Just for something different.
Senator,
Start again.
Senator, I'm not sure. I think we heard the question, didn't we? No, Senator. All right, Senator Chandler. If we waste time, we are costing the opposition time. Senator Chandler. Order on my left. Order. Senator Chandler. We are going to continue to waste time that is traditionally considered to be of value to non-government parties if I don't have silence for a colleague to ask a question. It is our first day back. Can we try a little harder? Senator Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister inform the Senate why the Morrison government is modernising and improving—
Order, Senator Chandler. I'm happy to do this till 3 o'clock. I'm happy to. It's not particularly, it's not particularly of concern to me how I spend the next 23 minutes. Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, since you called for order, Senator Wong hasn't ceased speaking.
Order.
Now, the opposition have had their bit of fun. If perhaps all interjections are disorderly, as you've rightly pointed out, you grant a degree of tolerance, Mr. President, but I think the tolerance is being stretched now.
I don't particularly want to commence the first day back by actually threatening to name anyone, but this is a question time, not a session of Gregorian chanting. So I would ask that Senator Chandler, after the opposition has made its point, and we'll have time to do so at 3 o'clock when we take note of answers, we hear Senator Chandler and her question in silence. Please.
Third time lucky. Can the minister inform the Senate why the Morrison government is modernising and improving Australia's superannuation system?
Minister for Superannuation, Financial Services and the Digital Economy, Senator Hume.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Chandler for her question and her ongoing commitment to a more efficient, a more cost-effective superannuation system in Australia. Mr. President, the Australian superannuation system manages around $3 trillion in retirement savings on behalf of around 16 million Australians. And while the system has grown significantly, it does need to adapt to better meet the needs of Australians. The Your Future, Your Super package, announced in the 2020-21 budget, is the Morrison government's next step in modernising and improving the Australian superannuation system to ensure that it is working harder for all Australians. This is part of the government's plan to make the Australian super system more competitive, more transparent, more efficient and better governed, and ensure that Australians can reap the full benefits of compulsory superannuation. Mr. President, the Treasury forecasts that Your Future, Your Super package will save Australians around $17.9 billion over the next decade in reduced fees and better performance of the super system. Young Australians entering the workforce could be up to $98,000 better off at retirement because of these reforms. At present, Australian households pay around $30 billion a year in superannuation fees, and that excludes insurance premiums. That's more than the $27 billion that households spend on energy bills and the $12 billion they pay on water bills. This government's measures to date have gone a long way to combating the inefficiencies and anomalies, but more must still be done. And, Mr. President, the question must be asked, will Labor again oppose the legislation that will make Australia's system more competitive, transparent and efficient?
Senator Chandler, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister advise the Senate—
Order. I really don't want to feel like I'm in a classroom. I know there are people in here with a lot more experience than I have in that. As teachers, I was referring to. We don't need chanting, quite frankly. The point has been made. It's not particularly amplifying, Senator Keneally, I can't hear Senator Chandler clearly, and I would like to. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister advise the Senate how Australians will benefit from an improved superannuation system? Thank you, Senator Chandler. Mr. President, announced the reforms announced in the 2021 budget. The Your Future, Your Super package will create efficiencies, reduce costs and reduce duplication through 4 measures. First, through ensuring that superannuation follows you when you change jobs. This will stop the creation of unwanted multiple accounts that reduce retirement savings through duplicate fees and insurance premiums. Second, by introducing a new and interactive online Your Super comparison tool, and this will empower members to make better decisions about who manages their retirement savings. The Your Super tool will help members compare and select My Super products that best meet their needs. Third, through holding funds to account for underperformance by introducing an objective performance test, and funds that fail that test will be required to inform their members, and if they fail in 2 consecutive years, they will be stopped from taking new members. And finally, by increasing transparency and accountability, ensuring trustees act in the best financial interest of members to maximise their retirement savings.
The answer has expired. I'm going to ask senators on my left to restrain themselves. First day back, special effort. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister outline the importance of a superannuation system that holds funds to account for underperformance?
Senator Hume.
Mr. President, this government has steadily raised the bar on superannuation performance expectations and governance structures since we came to power. Our focus has squarely been on ensuring superannuation delivers for members, for consumers, for everyday Australians. The Your Future, Your Super package will protect members from poor outcomes and encourage funds to lower their costs. The Morrison government wants, and indeed it expects, superannuation will deliver more for Australians. The Your Future, Your Super reforms will do just that. It wasn't until we on this side of the chamber came to government that the superannuation system had a light shone on underperformance and inefficiencies. We know this because our changes to the super system to make it more competitive, transparent and efficient have had great effect. 800,000 Australians who were locked into a fund by their employers now have the choice to choose their own fund. $760 million was paid to 700,000 employees through our amnesty measures, and $3.7 billion in unintended
Senator
accounts
Hume,
have been consolidated.
The answer has expired, Senator Hume. Order. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is for the Minister for Finance, Minister Birmingham. Minister, Mr Kelliston used to be responsible for policing our donations laws when he was Commissioner of the Australian Electoral Commission. He told the ABC yesterday that our political donation laws are some of the worst in the world. He said the rules do very little to make sure voters know who is funding political parties and how much donors are giving of any out there. You'd think he would know how bad things are. Is he wrong?
Minister for Finance, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator Lambie, for her question. I don't agree with the assessments that have been made. Yesterday we saw the disclosure of donations across the Australian political landscape, and they provide a high level of transparency around major donations that are made directly to political parties, and in doing so serve to give and should give the Australian people and public confidence around that donation system.
Senator Lambie, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minister, it was only yesterday that Australians found out about money that could have gone into the Coalition's bank accounts over 19 months ago. Do you believe that voters think that delay passes the pub test?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, I know that many things exercise the minds of many voters, and we've canvassed some of those during question time today. I think first and foremost at this time, health and employment considerations exercise the minds of voters, but in relation to political donations, we have a system where they are reported both by the donor under certain requirements and by the recipient under certain requirements. It's an important check and balance, and yesterday was an example of how it works.
Senator Lambie, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. When money changes hands between political parties and political donors in Queensland, Queenslanders hear about it in 7 days. Voters find out about political donations in 21 days during an election in New South Wales and Victoria. But federal political parties can drag their heels for more than a year before they have to tell voters about where their money has come from. Why are the expectations for political parties so much lower in federal parliament than they are in every other state except for Tasmania?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr President. The arrangements that are in place, and they've been reformed occasionally over the years in different ways, but they are arrangements that do provide for the publication of details. You can see across today's media that there is scrutiny given to that. All members of political parties are aware that such donations will be published. The donors who make those donations are aware that they will be published, and in doing so, as I say, that gives transparency across the system and ensures that our democracy, which is a free democracy in which people are free to engage, including to give money as part of that process. And if there are any areas where there might be arguably a lack of transparency, it's probably in relation to some of those non-political party entities, those like GetUp or others, whose funding sources
Senator
are more
Birmingham,
opaque.
time for the answer has expired. Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. The Liberal member for Hughes, Mr Craig Kelly, has made a range of statements including, and I quote, "You don't need no vaccine." Does the minister agree this statement is irresponsible and dangerous and endangers Australian lives?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, I understand Mr Kelly has equally indicated that he supports the distribution of the vaccine, intends to have a vaccine himself. Now, my message to all Australians and the message of our government to all Australians is whether you are a member of the public or a member of parliament, you ought to take your health advice from the health experts. When it comes to the development of our vaccine strategy, our government works alongside Professor Paul Kelly, the Chief Medical Officer, in the development of our vaccination strategy.
I have Senator Wong on a point of order. Senator Wong.
The point of order is not whether or not the Prime Minister is listening to the advice of the medical officers. The point of order is direct relevance. The question is not about whether the Prime Minister is listening to the advice of medical officers. We are asking this minister, who is representing the Prime Minister, that whether or not the statement by Mr Kelly that you don't need no vaccine, end quote, is irresponsible and dangerous.
Thank you, Senator Wong. The minister earlier in his answer did reference statements by the member of the other place, and he is specifically talking about communications and information about a vaccine. I've allowed you to restate the question. I can't instruct him how to answer it, but as long as he stays on those bounds, I think he is being directly relevant. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. All Australians are encouraged and should be encouraged to receive a vaccine. The vaccine is voluntary, and the rollout of the vaccination process will be voluntary. However, all members across the parliament, all people across leadership positions ought to encourage the safe receipt of the vaccines. Because, Mr President, we are doing this based upon the health advice, the best available health advice for the nation. As Senator Colbeck outlined to the chamber before, Australia is one of the few countries in the world.
On a point of order.
Point of order, direct relevance. The question is about a statement made by Mr Kelly. Will this minister say to the Senate and through it the Australian people that Mr Kelly's statement is irresponsible and dangerous?
Again, Senator
That
Wong.
is the question that he has been asked.
Senator
He is
Wong.
refusing to even respond to Mr Kelly's statement.
Senator Wong, I've allowed you to restate the question. I have ruled previously, and I believe the minister is narrowly constructing his remarks. You are asking me to instruct the minister the terms in which he should answer, which is outside my authority. There's a chance to debate answers after question time. I believe the minister is being directly relevant. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Again, as I have said very clearly, everyone should be encouraged to have the vaccine, and everyone should encourage receipt of the vaccine. And in this place and in the other place, everyone should encourage their constituents and others to receive a vaccine that in this country has gone through more scrutiny, safer processes, and will be part of a coordinated vaccination strategy for which all Australians should have confidence in its safety and its efficacy.
Senator O'Neill, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday at the National Press Club, like you did just now, Senator Birmingham, again refused to reject Mr. Kelly's irresponsible and damaging comments. Why?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, I don't think I could have been any clearer in relation to the government's position or my position about the receipt of vaccines. We encourage everyone to receive a vaccine. It is voluntary across Australia and will be voluntary. But we want to make sure there are high levels of confidence in the vaccine program. We have gone through a process that is thorough and rigorous to ensure those high levels of confidence. Australia, unlike other countries that have had to rush emergency approvals, has been able to go through the comprehensive processes of the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Australia, unlike other countries that have had to rush distribution processes, has been able to develop distribution arrangements that should give people confidence in the efficacy and efficiency of the rollout. Australia is taking a role leading not only in our country but in others in our region to promote the receipt of the vaccines.
Senator Birmingham, Senator O'Neill, on a point of order.
The point of order again is relevance. The question was very clear. Why do you continue to refuse to reject Mr. Kelly's irresponsible comments?
Senator O'Neill, again, I can't instruct the minister the terms in which to answer. I believe the minister is constructing his comments and is to be directly relevant and has addressed part of that question in his answer. Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, I'm not going to give airtime to debates about the merits of the vaccines. I'm going to stick to the merits of the vaccines and the merits of our vaccination strategy to get to all Australians.
Senator Birmingham. Senator O'Neill, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Order. I won't be able to hear Senator O'Neill. Senator O'Neill.
Will the minister today make a clear public statement that Mr. Kelly's advice to the Australian people is irresponsible and dangerous and should not be relied upon?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, I don't think I could have been any clearer in the previous answers about the advice to the Australian people. Rely upon the advice of Professor Kelly. Rely upon the advice of Dr Murphy. Rely upon the advice of your medical practitioners. Rely upon the advice that we promote of the health officials across this country. Rely upon the advice of the medical officers across the states and territories. Rely upon the advice of the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Because you know whose advice our government is relying upon? All of those experts who have kept Australia safe as we have worked hand in glove with them throughout this pandemic. We're not being distracted by other comments. We're not seeking to provoke or promote debates about the merits of the vaccine. We are focused on its efficacy and its delivery.
Senator Wong. Order on my left. Senator Wong.
Point of order, direct relevance. And I would again invite the minister to do the right thing and make a clear public statement that Mr Kelly's advice is irresponsible and dangerous and ought not be relied upon.
On the point of order, Senator Abetz, do you wish to rise on the point of order?
I do, Mr President. I've been listening very closely to the assertions being made by the opposition, and if I understand the assertion correctly, you don't need no vaccine is in fact a double negative, and therefore Mr Kelly is in fact promoting vaccine.
Senator
and
Abetz,
I don't know why the opposition has got any difficulty with the matter.
You had a very good grammar teacher, Senator Abetz. Congratulations. I'm willing to, Senator O'Neill, I've taken Senator Wong on the point of order. Senator Wong, I've allowed you to restate the question. I believe you're asking me to instruct the minister the terms in which to answer. I believe he's being directly relevant, including just then when he was he was outlining a series of authorities that I believe are directly relevant to the question asked. Senator Birmingham.
Mr. President, unlike those opposite, I'm not going to promote debates from anybody who might undermine the vaccine strategy or its distribution. We are going to promote. We are going to promote receipt of the vaccine. We are going to promote the efficacy and safety of the vaccine, and that's going to be the focus of this.
Senator Wong, interjections are always disorderly. Order. Order. I'll call the next question when I have the opportunity to hear it. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am delighted to ask the Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Senator Seselja, his first question as a Minister of our government. Can the Minister advise the Senate on how the Morrison government is supporting—
Order on my left.
It's really disrespectful when you—
Order.
No, first question.
Order.
First question.
It is not only
very disrespectful.
All right, Senator Henderson, this is not a reflection on you, but please, I'll ask you to start the question again when there's silence. On my left, it's not only disrespectful, which it is, it's also completely contrary to the standing orders, and we're only an hour into our first question time. Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the Minister advise the Senate on how the Morrison government is supporting our Pacific family in the face of the current global pandemic?
The Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Senator Seselja.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Henderson for her question. Firstly, I want to recognise the honour I've been given and to reiterate that there's never been a more important time for Australia to stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners across the Pacific. Now, the impact of the global pandemic on the economies of our Pacific neighbours has been profound, and the risk to their health systems is acute. The pivot of Australia's development program in response to COVID-19 has been unprecedented. The government's Partnerships for Recovery strategy provides the whole-of-government framework for our response. It is tightly focused on health security, stability and economic recovery in the Pacific, Timor-Leste and Southeast Asia. Now, Australia's 2021 ODA budget is fully aligned with the strategy, with an estimated $1.44 billion for the Pacific, a record high. The government is also providing $304.7 million for a Pacific COVID-19 economic response package. Now, this targeted temporary funding for 2 years is in addition to Australia's $4 billion ODA program and delivers critical financing to mitigate fiscal crises, maintain essential health services, sustain aviation connectivity and protect the most vulnerable. We've restarted Pacific worker employment programs to boost economic activity and incomes for Pacific families and Aussie farmers. These programs not only provide work for our neighbours, but support Aussie businesses who face their own losses if we do not act. The Pacific Step-Up means working with our Pacific partners to build a region that is secure strategically, stable economically and sovereign politically. Together, these programs show Australia's support for the Pacific as the leading contributor of aid in the region, but also as a neighbour, a partner and a friend in these difficult times.
Senator Henderson, a supplementary question.
Can the Minister provide an update on the progress of Australia's provision of vaccines to the Pacific and Southeast Asia?
Senator Seselja.
Thank you. There is no higher priority for countries in our region than access to COVID-19 vaccines. Now, Senator Payne and I have already reached out to our counterparts in the Pacific and Southeast Asia to underline our commitment and advance the next steps on vaccine rollouts, including $523.2 million over 3 years for a COVID-19 vaccine access and health security initiative for the Pacific and Southeast Asia. $80 million previously committed to the multilateral COVAX facility's advanced market commitment to support vaccination for the populations at greatest risk in 92 developing countries. Now, this initiative offers full vaccine coverage for the Pacific and Timor-Leste and will enable the procurement of vaccines and provide technical support to prepare for vaccine introduction. We're working closely with New Zealand, France and the United States to ensure our Pacific family have vaccines that are safe, effective and can be accessed to support the economic recovery of the region.
Senator Henderson, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister also provide an update on the support provided by Australia to our Pacific neighbours after Cyclone Yasa?
Senator Seselja.
Thank you, Mr President. And first, I acknowledge the dreadful loss of life and devastating property damage in Fiji, conditions they now face again, unfortunately, with Cyclone Anna. But we have stepped up with $4.5 million in humanitarian relief. At Fiji's request, a RAF aircraft conducted aerial damage assessments to aid relief planning. HMAS Adelaide was deployed to support relief efforts, including construction and engineering to repair over 30 schools. In total, we delivered over 165 tonnes of supplies and almost 1 million litres of water. Now, I had the opportunity to speak to Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, who thanked his Australian Vivale and noted again Australia's willingness to help Fiji in their hour of need. I reminded the Prime Minister that 12 months earlier it was Fiji who helped us with our bushfire recovery. It's a great example of how people and nations across the Pacific can help each other, and we will continue to support our Fijian Vivale in their recovery.
Order. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Senator Rice.
I ask the Minister representing the Prime Minister for an explanation as to why an answer has not been provided to question on notice number 1905 relating to community sport infrastructure grants.
Okay. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks,
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I understand a response has recently been tabled, Senator Rice, but I am happy to also lay a copy on the table for the Senate chamber, and I'll walk one over to you in a second.
Now, once it's been tabled, that brings a close to that matter, so it can't be followed up in the chamber.